Most men will die without ever walking through the first door, not because they lack the courage, because no one told them the door was there. 3 in the morning, you're lying there, your phone is face down on the table. Last night's glass of water is still there, cold, no music, no notifications, no plans, just you, and the quiet that's been waiting. A question slips into the room, very softly, a question you've been pushing away for years. Who am I living for? That's the moment something inside you breaks, very gently. You don't cry, you don't panic, but from that night on, everything starts to be different. Carl Jung saw that moment in thousands of patients, successful men, brilliant women, people everyone thought had it all, and he discovered something brutal, but strangely beautiful. There are 7 doors that quietly open when a man begins to stop living through other people's eyes. 7 doors, no one warns you, no one sells you a ticket. They open very slowly, very quietly, but once they open, you are never the same man again. I'm going to walk you through all 7, in the exact order Jung saw them, including the 4th door, where most men give up, and the 7th door, where a death happens that no one cries for, but it is the most important death you will ever have. Before I open the first door, understand this. You're not tired because you've failed. You're tired because you're winning the wrong game. If that line just hit you, don't leave. The next 7 minutes will change the way you look in the mirror, and 15 minutes after that, you will not be able to look at your life the same way again. Door 1. The nameless exhaustion. Let's say it straight. There's a kind of tired that sleep cannot fix. You sleep 8 hours, you wake up, you're still tired. Not physically tired, tired deeper than the body, tired the way a soul gets when it has to keep running on someone else's schedule. Losing tired is clean tired, winning the wrong game is rotting tired. Jung called it living by the collective map. You walk through the forest without a compass of your own. The crowd turns left, you turn left. The crowd speeds up, you speed up. You don't know where you're going, you just know you can't fall behind. A man without his own compass will follow any whistle. I want to tell you about a man I used to know. He worked in marketing. 15 years of steady promotions. His co-workers praised him. His boss called him irreplaceable. In everyone's eyes, he was the successful version of a 38-year-old man. One Tuesday night, after a late shift, he sat in his car in front of his own house, engine still running. He didn't get out, he just sat there, 20 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, eyes on his own front door, as if it belonged to another man. Finally, he texted me 6 words, "I don't know who I am." He didn't send that because he had failed. He sent it because he had succeeded. Every decision in the last 15 years had passed through one single question. Will they accept this? Will my boss approve? Will my friends be impressed? Will my parents have something to brag about? The apartment, because it photographed well. The job, because it looked good on a resume. The girlfriend, because she fit the lifestyle. The dinner, because it matched the palate a successful man is supposed to have. 15 years, 20,000 decisions, not one of them truly his. Here's the truth almost no one says out loud. At first, other people's approval keeps you alive. Over time, it starts to kill you. The cost is not a breakdown. The cost is a very slow erosion, like a drop of water falling on stone. The stone doesn't crack in a day. The stone wears down 1 micron at a time. By the time you look down, the old shape is gone. Neuroscience has a name for this. They call it external regulation. When your emotional state hangs entirely on outside feedback, your nervous system never rests. Not for a second. It's always waiting, always performing, always scanning. You don't live, you operate, and you become a ghost walking through your own life. Present everywhere, real nowhere. Machiavelli wrote a principle very few people read carefully. A state that chases public opinion will never rule public opinion. A man who chases approval will never master himself. This is what Jung discovered that turned psychology upside down. There is a moment in a man's life when he starts to feel tired, not because he failed, but because he has measured himself by the world for too long. That moment is not a sign you're lost. It's the bell telling you it's time to turn back. The first door opens right there, inside that quiet exhaustion, and when it opens, a question appears, very short, but it will follow you for years. Who has been living for me all these years? The answer will surprise you. Because it isn't your parents, it isn't society, it isn't your boss. And once you realize who has actually been sitting in the driver's seat of your life, you cannot turn back. Door 2. Persona, the mask that eats the soul. The answer is in the mirror. And that's why it's the hardest one to swallow. The one who has been living for you is a part of you. A part you built so silently, you forgot you were the one who built it. The mask is the coat. The young ego is the corpse wearing it. Jung called it the persona, the social mask. The persona is not a disease, not a defect. It is a survival tool. From the age of 3, you learned. Smile when adults smile. Be quiet when they're angry. Say the things that make your mother proud. Avoid the things that make your father look away. You didn't choose to build a persona. You built it to survive. The problem begins when you forget that the persona is only a role. You start to believe it is you. Jung wrote one sentence I have read over and over for years. The persona is what a man, in reality, is not, but what he himself and others believe him to be. You are not your persona, but both you and the world believe you are. The persona is the corpse you wear in order to be allowed to live. I knew a man who worked in finance, high salary, respected. He always said the right line, wore the right suit, laughed at the right moment. His persona was so polished that when he walked into a room, the air shifted around him. One night, after 3 glasses of whiskey, he whispered something to me that froze me in place. I don't know what I like anymore. He didn't say he hated his life. He said he no longer knew what he liked. Those are two completely different things. Hate is an emotion. Not knowing what you like is an abyss. Every time he wanted to do something different, watch a film that didn't suit his status, wear a shirt that didn't suit his role, say something true in a meeting, his head was immediately swarmed by voices. Will they find it strange? Will they be disappointed? Will they judge me? His persona had become a prison, and he had forgotten he was once a free man. This is the silent cruelty. At first, the persona protects you from the world. Over time, it protects the world from the real you. Machiavelli warned new princes of something almost no one applies to themselves. The man who wears the crown only to be seen will lose the crown to the man who wears it because he knows he should. The persona is no different. Worn to be seen, you lose yourself. Epictetus, a slave who became one of the greatest philosophers, taught a lesson very close to this. There are 2 roles in a man's life, the role the world assigns you, and the true nature underneath. The greatest mistake is to forget which is which. When you fuse completely with the persona, something grows inside you. Not alcohol addiction, not drug addiction, something subtler. You become addicted to approval. You need praise to feel okay. You need approving eyes to believe you are right. Not because you're shallow, because you have placed your entire self-worth in the mask, not in the man underneath. A woman I knew worked in content, 200,000 followers. Her life looked perfect. She always knew what to post, what to say, what to wear. She had never made anyone uncomfortable. One night, she texted me a sentence that froze me. Even when I'm alone, I'm still performing. She wasn't suffering because she had failed. She was suffering because she had nowhere left to take the mask off. The persona had eaten her private room, her sleep, the minutes when she was supposed to be alone. A mask is not built to carry a soul. The second door opens when you see this, and a question arrives. How much of your day is you? How much of it is performance? How many choices come from truth? How many come from the fear of being seen differently? Let the question sit. It will speak for itself. But here is the hard part. When the persona starts to loosen, a very old reflex wakes up inside you, a reflex that has been sleeping since childhood. And if you don't know it, it will slam the third door shut right in your face. If those two questions just hit you, comment one word. Seen. I read every comment. You are not alone. Door 3. The comparison trap. The reflex is comparison. The moment the persona loosens, you look sideways. You check who is moving faster, who has more, who is living bigger. You don't notice it. It's reflex. But it is the prettiest, smoothest, and deadliest trap of all 7 doors. The imitator is the permanent late arrival to every race. Jung discovered that comparison is not simply jealousy. It's not just insecurity. It's much deeper. It is the denial of your own path. It says your journey is invalid because it doesn't match theirs. Comparison is sprinting at full speed on a track that was never yours. I knew a 32-year-old man in tech. For years he felt like he was falling behind his peers. His friends had titles, houses, wives, retirement accounts. He kept changing jobs, changing cities, changing direction. Every reunion he came home with a small stone in his chest. I'm failing. Until one day, an event forced him to stop. When he stopped, he saw something very deep. He had never been lost. He had just been moving slower by the world's measure, but much deeper by the inner one. When you live inside comparison, you run on a timeline that isn't yours. You spend energy on speed, when what you actually need is direction. These are two completely different things. The fastest man going the wrong way is just the man getting furthest from where he belongs. Jung taught a lesson that's hard to hear. The individual path has no map, because if it had a map, it would no longer be yours. At first you need speed to keep up. Over time, you need direction so you don't lose yourself entirely. Machiavelli stated a principle few people dare to say plainly. The man who imitates others will always remain behind, because by the time he arrives where the other man arrived, that man has already moved on. The copier never catches up. He only catches up to the old version of the man he was copying. There's a cost to comparison no one talks about. You don't just lose time, you lose the feeling of your own path entirely. One day, even when no one is watching, you are still comparing. Comparing yourself to images of other people you've stored in your head. You become a prisoner of a contest no one is hosting. A grown man is not the man who finishes first. He is the only one who knows what he is running toward. The third door opens when you step out of the race. You're not quitting. You're just refusing to run on a track that was never yours. You begin walking a path shaped by your own feet. But even when you stop comparing, something remains, something subtler, something that has been with you since you were small. Something Jung gave a name so cold that just hearing it makes you shudder. The shadow. Door 4. The shadow and the inner judge. You've stopped comparing. You've seen the persona. But there's still something that makes your heart beat faster. A glance. A vague comment. A silence that lasts half a second longer than usual. Suddenly, you feel watched. You don't know why. Logically, you know they may be thinking nothing at all, but your heart still pounds. The enemy in your head eats the food you cook. You cannot evict him. You have to invite him to sit. Jung knew exactly what was happening. He called it the shadow. The shadow is not darkness, not evil. The shadow is the parts of you that you've denied, hidden, pushed down. Because you couldn't accept them, You force them into the basement of the psyche. But what is suppressed does not disappear. It projects outward, onto other people. At first, you think the world is judging you. Over time, you realize you are judging yourself through their mouths. A woman I once mentored worked in corporate communications. She was convinced her co-workers didn't respect her. Every question she got felt like doubt. Every piece of feedback felt like criticism. Every silence felt like contempt. She did her job brilliantly, but she was miserable. She was miserable every morning before walking into the office. She was miserable every evening reviewing the day's emails. One day she asked herself a single question: what part of me believes I am not good enough? That question wasn't easy. The belief had been there since she was a child, a belief never spoken out loud: I am not good enough. And because she couldn't accept it, she projected it outward. She made other people carry it for her. Her co-workers became judges. Her boss became a magistrate. Her friends became witnesses. While the truth was, only one person was judging her. It was her, through their mouths. When she realized this, she didn't try to fix other people. She turned inward. She said one thing to that part of her that had been waiting a long time: I see you. You are allowed to exist. A month later, her world was different. Not because other people had changed. They were the same. She had pulled the projection back. She had taken her own power back. The world you fear is often the mirror showing you the part of yourself you don't dare to face. Every enemy in your head wears the face of a part of you you once rejected. I once met a rich man, 60 years old, 3 companies, 2 houses, a wife who had left him. He told me a sentence I have not forgotten: I have defeated every enemy outside me. I don't know who the man across from me in the mirror is. That is the cost of not facing the shadow. You win the entire world. You lose the man in the mirror. Machiavelli taught a lesson few read carefully enough. The most dangerous enemy is not the one you see outside the walls. He is the one you feed inside the walls without knowing. The shadow is the enemy inside the walls. You feed him by pretending he doesn't exist. Here is the hardest truth of psychological adulthood. The grown man is not the man with no shadow. He is the man who has looked his shadow in the face, without turning away, without covering it, without justifying, without scrubbing it clean with success, just looking, and staying with it long enough that it becomes a companion instead of an enemy. I tried covering my own shadow for 10 years, with work, with books, with new relationships, with bigger projects. The more I covered, the bigger it grew. Until one night I couldn't cover it anymore. I sat down on the floor, looked at it, and for the first time didn't run. That was the night I started actually living. The cost of not integrating the shadow is high. You will spend your entire life fighting your own shadow, and you will think you are fighting the world. Every opponent you defeat will breed 2 new ones, because their roots are inside you. You cannot chop down a tree by hitting its shadow on the wall, and you cannot heal the shadow by hiding it. You can only heal it with light, and the only light that reaches the shadow is acknowledgement. The dark grows in secret. It dies in acknowledgement. I'm angry. I'm afraid. I'm jealous. I am weak in this part. I'm afraid of being abandoned. I'm afraid of not mattering. When you can say those sentences to yourself, with no one listening, the shadow starts to shrink. The 4th door opens here. When you stop pushing your own parts out for the world to hold for you, and you start keeping all the parts, the beautiful, the ugly, the part no one applauds. When you do that, the noise in your head quiets down. And in that quiet, something you have been running from your whole life finally stands up. A room, very small, only you inside it, and that is the next door. Door 5, the room of silence. This is the door of a room. No one is in it but you, and that is why you haven't walked in for years. The man who fears sitting still doesn't fear being alone. He fears meeting himself again. Jung saw solitude very differently. He called it the sacred space, the place where the soul finally gets to speak without being drowned out. Not loneliness, not abandonment, not failure, just space. When there's no one left to respond to you, something has to rise. The questions you've been avoiding for years. A nameless sadness. The inner conflicts. Everything social life helped you cover starts demanding to be seen. For an untrained mind, that is terrifying. A woman I knew worked in tech. Always busy, always connected. Her calendar was packed. One day she lost her job suddenly. No plan, no script. She sat at home alone. The first week was almost torture. Too quiet. She played podcasts non-stop. She called people non-stop. She scrolled endlessly. Anything to avoid hearing that silence. The second week softened. She could handle 10 minutes of quiet, then 20. The third week, something happened. In the silence, she heard something she'd been drowning out for years. Her own voice. Not the voice she performed online. Not the voice she used in meetings. The real one. Quiet, clear, a little tired but alive. You think silence is the absence of noise. Wrong. Silence is when the noise inside you quiets down enough that you can hear the noise of the world and realize it has nothing to do with you. Silence does not create the truth. It only allows the truth to be heard. Machiavelli taught a principle for rulers very few apply to themselves. A ruler who has no quiet space to listen to himself will only hear the noise of his court. You are not a prince. But your mind is a court, full of officials, full of advisors, full of flatterers, and none of them is you. You cannot integrate what you deny. And you cannot hear yourself while you are still performing for others. At first, being alone is punishment. Over time, it becomes a privilege. The man who has never sat still with himself will always be running, not running to somewhere, just running from the room inside. He accumulates everything: relationships, achievements, knowledge, reputation, so he never has to step into that room. But that room is the only one you cannot leave empty and still be alive. I remember a morning of my own, no phone, no plans. I sat for 40 minutes doing nothing. For the first time in years, I heard myself breathing. I felt where I was sitting. I realized something very simple and very painful. I had not been present in my own life for a decade. You don't need 10 years of meditation to open this door. You just need to dare to sit still for 20 minutes a day. No phone, no podcast, no book. Just you and you. The first week will feel uncomfortable. By the third week, you'll hear yourself. The fifth door opens when you can sit still without panicking, when you can be alone without feeling something is missing, when silence is no longer the enemy, but the only friend that's always there. And in that silence, something else begins to grow. Underground, where no one can see it, where no one will applaud, but it will decide your entire life. Door 6. The silent power of habit. The sixth door is underground. No one sees it. You can't show it off. There is no good photo to post, no dramatic story to tell, but this door decides everything else. Declarations are sand, habits are stone. The storm only leaves the stone behind. Here is the truth every self-improvement creator dances around. Real discipline is not born from willpower, it's born from invisible habit. Jung called it inner discipline, not forced discipline, not discipline to prove a point, discipline born from inner necessity. You do it because you have to, not because someone is watching. Jung wrote one very simple line: the shoe that fits one man pinches another. There is no universal formula, there is only your own rhythm. And here's the part few will sit with. The real power of a grown man does not come from declarations, it comes from the habits he keeps when no one is looking. Machiavelli wrote a principle about power that few read carefully. He distinguished two kinds of rulers. One builds power through speeches, decrees, and announcements. The other builds power through daily habits, how they wake, how they spend their money, who they let sit beside them. The first kind falls in a single season. The second kind lasts across generations. He called the second kind power, rooted in the ground. Not because they were stronger, because they had already become what they claimed to be. They didn't need to announce it anymore. This is the difference between the man who lives for applause and the man who lives for roots. A man I once mentored worked in finance. After his burnout, he didn't fully quit. He didn't announce a dramatic plan either. He just did one small thing. He woke up 30 minutes earlier every morning, read in silence, wrote a few lines of reflection, focused on one real task that day. He told no one. No one applauded. No one knew. 6 months later, he was a different man. His co-workers started noticing, not because he had announced anything, because something in the way he stood had shifted. When he spoke, people listened more. When he decided, no one argued. He didn't become someone else. He had simply put down roots. A wolf doesn't announce that he's a wolf. He just walks. Neuroscience confirms this. Actions born from personal meaning sustain focus far longer than actions born from external reward. That's why the man who works for applause burns out fast. The man who works from roots lasts. Real growth is almost always silent. There is a lonely truth about this door. You cannot share your progress. You cannot post it. You cannot prove it. You can only live it. And that is exactly the point. You have to step into it without anyone clapping. The man who only works when people are watching builds nothing. He decorates, and decoration is beautiful until the wind picks up. At first, inner discipline is a burden. You have to wake up when you don't want to, say no when you want to say yes, keep promises to yourself when no one is checking. Over time, inner discipline becomes the only thing keeping you yourself when everything else collapses. The sixth door opens when you realize this. Not suddenly, after hundreds of small mornings, you wake up, you do the thing you said you would do, you tell no one. You don't need anyone to know. One day you look back and realize you have become the man you used to only dare to imagine. But there is still one final door, the hardest one, the one many men come close to, but never dare to walk through. Because to walk through it, something inside you has to die. Door 7. The death of the old self. The seventh door is not a door you walk through. It's a door you have to leave your old self lying behind. The young ego needs a mirror. The mature ego is the mirror. You've put down roots. You've handled the silence. You've seen the persona. You've pulled the shadow back. You've stopped comparing. But there is still a very small wish left in you. You want someone to confirm you walked it right. One person to say you've grown. One look to tell you weren't wrong. And you ask yourself, am I failing if I still need that? Jung knew exactly what this was. This is not failure. This is the final door. When the ego is young, it needs the world to know it exists. Praise, attention, positive feedback. These are the mirrors the ego uses to take shape. The young ego must look into a mirror to know it is real. That is a necessary stage, not a sin. But Jung taught a hard lesson. The ego was not born to stay in that stage forever. When the ego matures, it no longer needs the world to say it's okay. It stands on a different foundation. Inner alignment. Worth no longer comes from approval, no longer from status, no longer from comparison. It comes from a very deep feeling that what you live, what you think, and what you do are not in conflict. They are in line. Machiavelli wrote a principle for princes newly crowned. He said, "You cannot wear the old crown and the new crown at the same time. One of them has to fall to the ground. The old ego is the old crown. You cannot wear both. There is a funeral you have to attend. No flowers, no guests, no eulogy. It is the funeral of the man you have worn for 20, 30, 40 years to be accepted. Until you bury him, the real man underneath cannot stand up. Nietzsche warned you of this very early. You must let the old in you die, otherwise the old will drag you into the grave with it. At first, the ego needs the world as a mirror to know it's real. Over time, the mature ego needs no mirror, because it has become a source of light. The mature ego does not need a mirror. Do you want to know the moment a man actually walks through the seventh door? It's not when he announces it. It's not when he succeeds. It's not when he is praised. It comes on a very ordinary morning. He wakes up, he makes coffee, he doesn't touch his phone for the first 30 minutes. And he realizes something very simple. Today he does not need to be seen. Today he is already enough. That is the funeral. No flowers, no guests. Just the warmth of a coffee cup and a man who has finally come home. Jung taught the deepest paradox of inner life. The more you focus on yourself the right way, the more truly present you become for others, not because you are performing, because you are finally here. The man behind a mask cannot be present for anyone. He is always somewhere else, behind the mask. Only the man who has buried the mask can stand next to someone and actually be there. The seventh door opens when you let the ego that needs approval die, and the mature ego stands up. It is a death no one attends, no one cries for, but it is the most important death you will ever have. The moment you stop searching for your place in the world loses the power to shake you, not because you've become cold, not because you've become indifferent, because you have finally come home to yourself. From this point, life is not necessarily easier, but it is truer. You don't need to live fast to keep up with anyone. You don't need to live correctly to be accepted. You don't need to live big to be seen. You only need to live in time with the deepest thing moving inside you. When you come home to yourself, you don't become a fortress. A fortress can be besieged. You become a mountain. A mountain doesn't defend itself, it just exists. And every storm that passes has to bend around it. The 7 doors are open. You can't close them. You don't need to. You only need to stand up. The real question is not whether you should focus on yourself. The question is how much longer you'll wait, how many more days you'll live through other people's eyes, how many more moments you'll postpone your own awakening. If this video reached you, do 3 things. Not for me, for you. Subscribe, so this journey doesn't end here. Comment which door you're standing in front of. I read every comment, and I want to know where you are in these 7 doors. And tonight, spend 20 minutes alone. No phone, no plans, just you and you. The compass you've been searching for everywhere has been waiting inside you. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And that is where real change begins.